I'm about 6 to 7 weeks out from Canadian Nationals, and I'm going to be talking about my injury that I dealt with for the past 7-8 months, and also talk to you guys about how to overcome injury, because it is something that if you train hard, you're likely going to have to deal with. And at least, whether it's an injury or not, a big setback because of life circumstances. So, got to bring you guys back to 2016. This is when I initially had a hernia operation on my groin. I'd had the hernia for a while, and for those of you who don't know, if you imagine this is the abdominal walls, a hernia is just a tear in there where your intestines and such can push through. And at some point, if they push through, when you brace or do something hard and it gets stuck, it can become strangulated and not go back in. And when that happens, the blood flow stops, and then obviously really bad. So not only that, but it's very uncomfortable to lift with, and at some points when it's really bad, if it's really bugging you, even laughing, coughing, these things are, they hurt. So that initial surgery I had, the recovery was quite rough because I had some infection or an allergic reaction to the mesh or the stitching that they used to close me up. I was in a specialized hospital, and at 18 years old or whatever I was, 17, 16, whatever. I don't know how I don't know this, but I was by far the youngest person in the hospital, and it took me the longest to recover, which I was like, wow, am I really that big of a baby? Up until 2025, I had no issues with it. Took obviously a while after the surgery to get back to my strength, but at that time I wasn't too strong, and it was easy to progress past that point. Pulling us forward in time to 2025, around April, I had just done the Canadian National Championship. I started doing a lot more core work and things like that after that competition, and that is what kind of set off the groin hernia type of injury again. It was a really weird feeling because I had already known what it felt like to be so unable to do the lifts, so unable to do normal life activities and not feel it. And once you can feel it, you just know. It's like, it could be over. And that's exactly what I thought.
I just had an ultrasound. It could be fully over. So we're going to wait a few days and find out what's going on. But
I knew it was pretty bad. But the ultrasound didn't come back with anything alarming. He didn't say it was completely torn open. So I had some more hope. But I could definitely tell when I was squatting, benching, deadlifting, it took my capacity to lift from like, say, 600-pound mark on the squat and the deadlift down to like 200 pounds at some points. And then eventually I'd get to like 300, go back down, get to 400, go back down. And then around September, things started to go a bit better. It wasn't just the squat, bench, and deadlift. I also couldn't really do any pull downs, any rows, any push downs, because all of those things obviously involve your core trying to stabilize your body and keep you in a good position. And when I would try and do that, it would just be terrible. So for those 7 or so months, I had to do everything unilateral, extremely high rep, so that I didn't feel any kind of forces on my core, which then would trigger the hernia problem. In watching some of the YouTube, I have returned back to peak form. I'm 7 weeks out. I'm probably going to do a pretty good total. Could potentially be my biggest total PR of all time. We'll have to wait and see. Now, how to overcome an injury or a setback like this. I think the first and most important thing is to feel your feelings about it, because it sucks, especially if you put the gym training as such a high priority like myself. When it's taken away or when you're really bad at it, it really hurts. And it's okay to feel that, because it's likely going to be a decently long process. On the other hand, sometimes you can tweak your back and be better in like 2-3 days or a week, but the potential for it being a long time injury is there. So if you're pissed about it, don't just try and mask that and be like, oh, like we're going to overcome. Of course you are. Pretty much no matter what, unless you give up, you're going to overcome and be back to normal. But I think it's important to feel your feelings, which I honestly don't do that good of a job of. But if you want advice, I think you should. Next thing, after you've felt your feelings, you're all sad, whatever, you're mad, who knows. Feel those feelings, and then it's time to set a game plan in place. Whether you have a coach, you go to a physio, or a rehab specialist in general, you need to have a game plan to set you up to get back to where you were and then surpass that, right? We can't just wing it. A lot of the time, injuries need some pretty intensive rehab. And if you're feeling all sad for too long and just like in your feelings about how shitty the situation is, which it is shitty, and you don't do your rehab and you don't do what you need to do and you stop training, then you're never going to reach your peak again. So I think it's important to realize that you have to continue training and you have to do your physio and rehab work no matter how you feel. Just get it done. Pretend like it's training. When you would train, you would go even if you didn't feel like it that day. You know? I mean, hopefully. When coming back from injury, it is as much of a mental battle as it is physical. If you are constantly comparing yourself to where you were and what you could do, and then where you're at now, it honestly might be an insane difference. You're looking up at the mountaintops and you're down there and you can't even walk, okay? But you can get back up there. But if you're constantly comparing to how you felt and how you were back then, in your prime, in your peak, whatever, you're going to have a very hard time accepting where you're at and doing what you need to do to get the momentum built to get back up there. Be willing to eat shit for a while. Having fun is something that we all want to do in the gym. We want to progress, and sometimes when you're coming back from an injury, you're not going to feel that for a long period of time. The biggest thing is to know that future you is thanking you for just putting in the work regardless of the short-term outcome and the short-term dopamine hits that we get when we're training to our fullest capacity. Every single person who does not recover from their injury, and the reason why recovery rates are probably so low across potentially the injury that you're dealing with, is because people don't do what they need to do, right? It's very hard to go constantly put in work without seeing this great outcome. You have to do it for the long term, and you have to do it no matter how you feel. And the last thing I'd say is do not let your injury become your identity. Of course, you need to know that you're injured and not go max out, not go try and do these max things, because it's not going to go well. But at the same time, if you're constantly like, oh, I'm injured, oh, I'm hurt, oh, I can't, oh, this, oh, that, you are putting yourself in a box, okay? Do your rehab. Try as hard as you can on what you can, and slowly build the momentum to get yourself back to where you were. I'm going to play some videos and do a voiceover of my recovery, my injury, my story, and hopefully it'll help some of you guys. So I really want to touch on the point that you should document your recovery process. There's a few videos here you'll see where 150, 120 kilo squats around the 200 to 300 pound range. Lots of those. And then even lots of the guy behind me making fun of me for doing this weight. But obviously it looks like I could do more, but the pain, man, it was bad. Anyway, whole point is document everything so that you can look back on it and remind yourself that, next time you will be okay. The good thing about getting injured more than once is that you've already recovered and been through something quite hard. So looking back on these videos, reminding myself of how I felt then is actually fueling my training now even more, because I am, like I said, in the moment, you're doing all of this for the future you who will then thrive. I'm looking back at this and watching this guy, and I'm like, bro, you're a fucking gangster. Because I felt like shit a lot, and I would still train, It's just like, there's times I wanted to leave the gym, but I never did. There's times I needed 2 spotters for a 3 red squat when I squat, hopefully 6 reds soon, Tons of terrible days and tons of days that I didn't want to go, but I showed up, and you guys need to do that as well. A lot of things that I did not film, though, because I didn't want to, because I didn't feel good. And I probably deleted a lot of them, but there's a lot of fails, a lot of fails around even 3 reds, even 200 kilos. And as I got better, 240 kilos was such a hard place for me to surpass for many months. I'm going to make a compilation. It'll probably be live on Instagram, or will be live soon when you listen to this. But it's actually crazy how many times that weight stapled me to the floor. It was just like, as I recovered, the pain would shift. So this day, 4 reds moving good, pretty good anyway, I went up and I got stapled. The biggest thing is that as you recover and as you slowly build work capacity back and you're getting back to touching the heavier weights, you're probably going to get very sore, very beat up, and potentially compensate, because it was my right side of my groin hurting. My right lower back really compensated. My right adductor really compensated, and I injured both of those along the recovery process. So, it definitely gets frustrating. It's definitely hard, but at the end of the day, if you really love this, even if you only really love it when it's good, then you should put in the work to get you back to that point. And, you can see here, things are starting to pick up. I'm squatting into the 400s again and just building my work capacity back up after many months of not being able to do much. Along the way, you can also find out, here's a 240 fail. But along the way, you can also find out what is best for your body. For me, honestly, hitting singles and just getting better at tolerating singles was way better for me rather than doing heavier sets of 5 or 4 or 3 because of each rep's demand on my body and how weak I was for so long. I believe this is one of the last 240 kilo fails that I have on video. I also have a lot more on my camera, but I have not gotten those in this video or on my phone. But yeah, just like my adductor or my erector would just feel like snapping. And for quite a while, I was pulling with pain every rep, every set. Another thing that you should establish with whoever is helping you along the recovery journey is a pain rating scale. Either like a red light, green light, yellow light system, or rating the pain or discomfort 1 through 10 really helps. You don't want to be training through immense pain, whether that would be like a red light, your body's telling you to stop, or anything above like a 5 or a 4 of discomfort and pain. Typically, you don't want to push through. You'd rather pull the weight back. Anyway, I am not a rehab professional. I have definitely helped rehab a ton of people, but that is not my true calling. I am just a powerlifting coach. Actually, here's an example of me repping out something decent on the pull, but every rep hurt. Anyway, guys, get a physio, do your rehab, be relentless, and then you'll be making a video like this, how I overcame my injury. So thank you guys for watching. Leave a thumbs up and subscribe. See you at the next video.